In a letter dated November 17th, 1888, written to the Governor of California, the Honorable Robert Whitney Waterman. Dear Sir, a petition of citizens of this county praying for the commutation by Your Excellency of the sentence of death pronounced upon John Olson and William Drager in the Superior Court of this county on the 9th day of October, A.D. 1888, to imprisonment for life, has been presented to me for my signature, and I have signed the same. Marcus P. Bennett, El Dorado County District Attorney. Yes, I wrote that letter 25 years ago, and I still think about the hangings of those two men. Thank you, friends and family, for coming to hear me speak today. I'd like to welcome you to this beautiful cemetery, a place that we can view daily from our house across the street. Sadly, my wife Molly and I have two young children buried here, our baby daughter Marie, who died in 1888, and our only son, Marcus Jr., who died at 3 in 1904 of acute dysentery. Despite the passage of the years, we continue to have a deep hole in our hearts for those two. Added to this are my current serious health problems. I've had progressive muscular atrophy since before being elected El Dorado County Superior Court Judge in 1891. Constant weakness in my arms and legs, and chronic fatigue. I wouldn't wish this cruel illness on anyone. This has caused me to rethink my views on life and its shortness. Also, to revisit regrets. Lately, I've had some regrets about my role as district attorney in the prosecution of John Olson and William Drager for the murder of John Lowell. With what I fear is not much time left for me, I've asked you here to share with you how I felt about the prosecution and subsequent hangings of those two men in 1888. My father-in-law, Sheriff James Madison Anderson, spoke to the newspapers then. Now, I speak to you. Well, you know the story. John Lowell, a 59-year-old farmer and rancher, living alone at his place north of Mormon Island, was shot in the back of the head by Henry Myers, who finished the deed by breaking his gun over Lowell's skull. They stole 5 horses, a mule, a buggy, and a harness, and returned to Sacramento County, where they sold them. Eventually, the men were captured and charged with grand larceny. As our county's district attorney, I attended the hearings in Sacramento, knowing that eventually the men would be brought back to this county to be tried for murder, and I wanted to be prepared. I was only 33 at the time, and this was just the second murder case I'd ever prosecuted. It would also be my last, when I decided not to seek re-election. It was simply too much for me then, and I wanted to return to private practice. While all 3 men admitted to stealing the stock after the killing, their stories differed significantly about the killing itself. Myers' stories varied the most. First, he said it was an accident. They'd borrowed the gun from Lowell, it was in poor condition, and went off after getting caught in his jacket. Accident or not, if the 3 men intended to steal or kill beforehand, it was a capital offense for all, and they deserved to hang. In another story, Myers said that Olson used a pistol to shoot Lowell, and that Drager used a hammer to hit Lowell over the head after Olson's shot was fired. Myers had many stories, 11 or so, I believe. Regarding Drager, I interrogated him in Sacramento, and his story about having never gone to the ranch didn't hold water. But when he got to Placerville, Drager finally admitted to having been there and said that he saw Myers hit Lowell over the head with his gun, but that he, Drager, did not take part in the killing. And you know, I believed him. Olson was generally the most consistent, stating that he'd been walking ahead of Lowell when Myers shot his gun and nearly got hit by the bird shot himself. I believed his story too. But again, it wouldn't matter if it was proven that the men intended to steal or kill ahead of time. Both Drager and Olson insisted there was no plan to kill Lowell and that the decision to steal the stock was only made after he was dead. This I questioned, at least for most of the trial, as the evidence tended to incriminate them. According to the law, the multiple statements made by these men could not be used to incriminate one another. Otherwise, you'd have a whole lot of finger-pointing by criminals to escape the hangman's noose. So, if Myers said that the gun went off, but that Draeger hit Lowell over the head with a hammer, the part about the gun going off was admissible. But the portion about Draeger and the hammer was not. Made for a pretty complicated and confusing trial. Judge Williams repeatedly told the jurors that they could consider specific portions of statements and not others. Looking back on it, I'm not sure the jury could sort it out and didn't let some finger-pointing statements into their deliberations. Throughout the course of the trial, it became clear to me that the evidence that Draeger and Olson conspired beforehand to kill Lowell or steal the stock was merely circumstantial. Initial witness testimony indicated that both Myers and Olson had been in search of a colt for breeding well before the murder occurred. However, the defense failed to call additional witnesses to corroborate that the crimes were not premeditated. Perhaps unfairly, I can only speculate it's because Myers' attorney would have been out of his own pocket for the witness costs. After the verdict finding all three men guilty of murder, my abiding doubts about the case against Draeger and Olson worsened when Myers recanted and took full responsibility. He was hanged on November 30th, 1888, and deservedly so. No regrets about that. Now, of course, a defendant admitting sole culpability would not usually bear any significant weight. But, given the circumstantial evidence, this case warranted it. Both Draeger and Olson received a stay of execution pending appeal. The appeal did not go well for those two, mostly because their attorneys, Placerville's finest, did not present any defense at trial. They also neglected to submit an instruction to the jury that they had the option to sentence any of these men to life only. Further, they failed to submit any evidence on appeal, including the trial transcript, because they missed a deadline. They missed a deadline. I was especially upset over this last transgression and understood when my replacement deputy attorney, Ingham, who had assisted me throughout the course of the trial, stormed out of the court after the defense sought yet another extension that he could not agree to. Now, I wish I'd done more to help Ingham, but at the time I was distraught over Molly's and my continuing grief for our baby Marie, who had died less than a month earlier. Yes, friends and family, you will assure me that I did all that I could to save Draeger and Olson from death. Many of us, including 9 of the jurors, signed at least one petition seeking to have these men's sentences commuted to life only. And I wrote a letter to the governor expressing my abiding doubts, but none of this worked. I do regret that I called these men dull, heavy, ignorant fellows in my letter to the governor, but I was trying to show that it was unlikely that there was any conspiracy between the men that Myers should ultimately take the fall. These men buried Lowell's body and stole his stock. This was a despicable act. But we are not the hangtown of the gold rush. I did not visit the men in jail, but was told that they were model prisoners who worked diligently to create and sell crafts, and that, until the very end, they hoped they would be saved. Sailors at heart, they carved 2 beautiful model clipper ships, one of which is currently on display at the Ivy House on Main Street, and the other they gave to Sheriff Anderson. I understand they worked hard on those ships to make them just right. I had a respect for those 2 sailors and their difficult life at sea. I say respect because it took me back to when, full of arrogance and conceit from having just graduated from Harvard, I set sail around the Horn from Boston to join my brothers here in El Dorado County. It was a rough and treacherous trip, and I will tell you now, I was so sick, that I contemplated slitting my throat and casting myself overboard. You could have neither arrogance nor conceit to be a sailor. Instead, you needed to have unquestioning obedience to those in charge. At the time, I noted my admiration for the sailors on that ship and their brutal life. Sailors until their last moments. Bill Draeger and John Olson followed Henry Myers unquestioningly. which led them straight to the hangman's noose. My father-in-law, James Madison Anderson, did not disclose the details of Draeger and Olson's hangings at the time, so I will do so now. You need to know how brave these men were. After they'd taken their positions on the fatal trap, Under Sheriff Winchell asked Draeger if he had any final remarks to make, and in a clear and steady voice, Draeger said the following.
Gentlemen, I thank all of you who have come here this morning to be with me in my last moments. I desire especially to thank the officers, and particularly Sheriff Anderson and Mr. Winchell. They have been more than officers. Anderson has been a father to me, and Winchell a true friend. I also want to thank the lawyers, Messrs. Carpenter and Irwin, and also District Attorney Bennett. My time has come, and I have to go. As for the crime for which I am to suffer today, I have been an abused man. Now, Winchell, that is all I have got to say. And what's the good of all this talk anyway? If I have any enemies in this world, I forgive them. And I hope they forgive me.
I'm not sure I deserved it, but I must admit that it did bring me some comfort that Bill Draeger acknowledged my minor role in trying to save him. Young Olson was very ill that morning and had to be administered an opiate just to brace him up. But he too did the best he could. His voice was almost inaudible, but he forgave his enemies and hoped to obtain forgiveness in the next world. The black hoods were put on. Sheriff Anderson pulled the lever and sprang the trap. The deed was done, and the decreed justice was served. My father-in-law truly hoped he would never have to hang another man, and he didn't. Neither did any other El Dorado County sheriff after him. In 1891, the California legislature passed a new law, stating that all executions must take place within state prisons, which for us means Folsom. As a consequence, the hangings of Bill Draeger and John Olson were the last hangings in El Dorado County, and among the last in California not held in a state prison. On the morning of the hangings, Bill Draeger said that he felt he was about to embark on his ship and was fearful of getting left. I hope that both he and John Olson were able to join their ship for one final sail, a journey that all of us, myself included, must contemplate as our turn approaches. May God rest their souls.